at the Awaken Your Potential Summit. Welcome back. Today I have another wonderful guest here with me. His name is Eric Majeski, and he's a shamanic practitioner, a writer, and a musician in the Chicago area. So welcome, Eric.
Hi, Kim. It's awesome to be here today. Looking forward to our interview today.
Well, it's great to have you. You have such an interesting background and an interesting life path that's brought you to where you are today, and I'd love for you to share some of that with the folks here with us. So I know you have a background in finance and stock trading, and now you're a shamanic practitioner, so can you fill in some of the gaps?
Yeah, it's been quite the journey. And just starting to make sense of it all. I was in finance and trading. I had moved to Chicago in 1998 and started my own firm, built it from scratch to about 25 employees and, multi-million dollars in revenues. And, as most know, it's an extremely stressful industry. So I was not immune to that. My health was suffering. I started dabbling in things like Reiki and acupuncture to deal with the stress that came with that vocation. In the early 2000s, I'm suffering from anxiety attacks, depression, insomnia, amongst many other things. And so I started trying different holistic approaches to deal with that. I was reflecting on the journey just a couple of days ago, and I used to think like trading and finance were disconnected from my current path, but I realized how much I had cultivated my intuition and my vision abilities in that arena. Trading the stock market is actually a discounting mechanism where the goal is to capture the disconnect between perception and reality. The perception of how things are and the reality of how things are, or the perception of how things are being viewed. In there, that's the goal, is to predict future prices. And so I didn't realize that I was cultivating these skills at the time. And that was, so it was there all the time. I just didn't have a language for it. In 2001, when the tragic 9/11 attacks happened, it really hit home. I had a really intuitive experience. Again, I built this firm, for 4 years. I hadn't missed a day of work. I was working 80 hours a week. And the night before, I should add that our firm was right downtown next to the Sears Tower. Well, the day before, on September 10th, I just had this sinking feeling in my stomach and this awful, awful feeling. I actually took my first day off since the day I opened my firm. I called in on 911, and that was the day the tragic planes crashed. And at the time, I had no way to process this experience. Like, why did I stay home? Something had triggered. And I didn't have a language. I didn't have any guides or teachers to help me process such an experience, even though I was aware of, say, the math of the experience, everything that had happened. And it took me a while to, really own the gift and claim it. In 2006, I purchased an interest in a consciousness bookstore, and that's where I really accelerated my learning of energy and shamanic practices and how the universe operates.
And then what happened to the bookstore?
That was open for 4 years, and then we decided in 2008 to close it. It wasn't really the best business decision of my life, but it was the greatest life decision I would point to in terms of my path and my growth.
How so?
Well, just because, I met so many teachers, guides, practitioners, authors would come through there, people like Deepak Chopra and Bruce Lipton and David Lynch, and all of these teachers. I started taking workshops. I was reading almost every book on the shelf, not quite everyone. Customers would come in, hey, have you read this book? And I'd be like, well, I haven't read all of them, but that was my source of higher learning. And for about 4 years, all I did was read and do workshops and meet amazing, amazing people and healers that are still, I'm honored to count them amongst my friends and in my network today.
Well, that's great. So now you've been through this whole life experience so far, and now you utilize energy regularly, not only in your own life, but in your understanding and how you work with people. So what does energy mean to you?
Well, in one of the workshops I teach that energy is you. We are energy, and so is everything else, of course. There's that Einstein quote about everything is energy, and it ends something like, this is physics, it's not philosophy. It's kind of along that idea. Energy is the life force of everything. And that idea flows right into the notion of shamanism, which views everything as alive, related, and interconnected.
Okay, which that brings me to my next question, which is, okay, so how does that energy play into shamanism? What is shamanism? Because I've heard that term used a lot, and it's used in a lot of different ways. So how would you explain it?
I think it's very succinct to say it's humankind's earliest and most ancient spiritual practice, flat out. There's those that believe it dates back as far as 30,000 years ago. It's practiced on every continent in the world. And when I say practice, that's the key word. It's a practice. It's not a religion. Even though there's elements of this practice in nearly all major faiths and religions. It's earth-based. It sees the interconnectedness of all things. It views everything as alive and related. Everything. And that includes the planet, trees, rocks, animals, everything. Like the world of spirit is all around us, and the wisdom of that world reveals itself through direct experience, especially through ceremony and ritual. So, so what is it that I do? Like, what's, a practitioner's role? Well, I would call myself a guide to the nature of things. And by understanding that, one can understand the nature of themselves or their own true nature. This nature of things is invisible. It's invisible on this plane of ordinary reality anyway. And to my clients that seek healing, this represents a journey into the unknown. And for a lot of people, and myself included, for a long period, like many of us fear the unknown. Sometimes it's scary, and I still get scared by the unknown. I just have more tools in my toolbox to deal with it now. What the shamanic practitioner does is the practitioner has the ability to enter what I would call a non-ordinary or altered state of consciousness in order to gain access to a non-ordinary reality that has the knowledge and power for healing. The practitioners, they have different gifts. Some can see, some hear and feel, some all three, but they have the ability to see or hear or feel and communicate in this world, often with helpers such as nature spirits, power animal guides, healing ancestors in the lineage of shamanic healing. But the most commonplace term I would use for what a shamanic practitioner does is he or she is a bridge builder, facilitating a bridge between the known and the unknown to bring a future vision of one's highest self and all of that wisdom into this present moment. And that's what I do. Did that come through okay?
Yeah, and actually it's bringing this thought to mind, like there are so many channels of communication, so many channels and ways to communicate beyond what we would recognize on a day-to-day plane. I mean, you think back 30 years, and were they thinking of everybody talking on cell phones where there's no wires, you can talk across the globe, and that wasn't necessarily in the state of mind. And it seems to me like when you're talking about a shamanic practitioner, they're open to a different channel of communication than, let's say, the individual is, so that they can go in and receive the message or be that funnel of the message to whoever's seeking it out.
That's exactly right. And I would even go so far as to call it a human technology. I mean, we're all hardwired with everything we need to be the best version of ourselves. And it's that ability to get quiet, that ability to get still, that ability to listen, and to receive that guidance. You know, different traditions, different practices have different names for it, but they're all pointing to the same thing. It's that inner guide, that inner genius, that inner intuition. And, you know, the shamanic way is just the way I've been taught and trained as to how to access that.
How did you become a shamanic practitioner, from, you know, going from trading to bookstore owner to shamanic practitioner? How did that come about?
That's a good question. I played outside a lot as a child. No, I've always had this gift of like seeing people's best version of themselves, and to, you know, developing the mastery of that art is a different thing. You know, the mastery of the art of showing people just enough, but not too much at any one time if that's not ready to be received. That's a lifelong journey and practice, and something I work on every single day. In 2006, I went to Peru, and I did plant medicine ceremonies with the shamans there to gain this non-ordinary altered state. And, you know, it was interesting. They were treating me as if I was one of them and as if I had been doing this forever, you know, when in fact I was really just getting started. I certainly didn't see what they saw. And so they were offering that gift to me. You know, they were seeing my future self at the time and treating me that way in the present. A couple of months later, after those experiences, I did my first sweat lodge, and I was introduced to what would be my now ceremonial Arapaho grandfather, and this is the medicine man, Singing Man is his name. An amazing healer and medicine man, and he asked me to apprentice with him. I've been learning with him for the last 5 years. I became versed in native rituals and ceremonies. I received my medicine bag from him. And what that means, you know, along with that honor, I received the blessing to facilitate purification lodges and other ceremonies, you know, which, you know, I'm not native by blood, and this is just it's a high honor for me. I respect it immensely and hold it in high esteem. Along with that, you know, this is like a technical point, but like I don't call myself a shaman. My belief is that this title is reserved for the elders and the lineage of respected medicine men and ancestors that have come before me. So shamanic practitioner is accurate, and I've been blessed by my grandfather to use that phrasing.
That's interesting. How did you end up going to Peru in the first place?
That's a great question. I had met, again, through the bookstores where I met people that introduced me to this conference. It was actually called The Bridging of the Americas, and representatives from every indigenous tribe in the Western Hemisphere were there. And the theme was the bridging of the Americas, and when the eagle and the condor, the eagle representing the male energy and the condor representing the female energy, the prophecy is that when the eagle and the condor fly together, the union of the male and female energies, that this world will know peace. And so that's what was being celebrated down there. And I met some healers through the bookstore that were participating, and they were like, you should come, and I listened, and there we go.
And off to the races.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so as a shamanic practitioner, and you mentioned this very briefly, but you work with people to help them find their inner genius.
Mm-hmm.
So what is that? And then does everybody have one?
Yeah, good question. Inner genius is our own creative life force, and it could be called our inner guru. You hear about everyone has a guru or a teacher, and my belief is that we're evolving from the world of guru to the world of inner guru, where it's inner teacher, and we all have this inner genius that is there and has all the knowledge and all the wisdom and all the creativity we need to have the most magnificent life. We just have to allow it to come through, unblocked, untethered, and get quiet enough to listen to it. So this inner genius is our inspiration, it's our guide, it's our life purpose all in one. It's our sole reason for being alive. Everyone has one, and that's an important distinction, because it's like you aren't a genius, you have a genius. You aren't a genius, you have a genius. And the ancient Greeks and Romans believed strongly in this notion. A lot of thinkers and philosophers like Carl Jung, the psychologist, Socrates, believed in this notion, and they consulted this genius all the time.